Our story begins over 4,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. Along the banks of the Nile River, this is where we find the earliest and most extensive evidence of humans keeping crocodiles. The ancient Egyptians had a complex relationship with crocodiles. On one hand, these massive reptiles were a constant danger, killing people who came too close to the water. But on the other hand, the Egyptians saw something divine in these powerful creatures. They created an entire religious cult around Sobek, the crocodile-headed god of water, fertility, and protection. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Egyptians didn't just worship an abstract idea of crocodiles, they kept actual living crocodiles in temples as sacred animals. Pharaohs sometimes kept crocodiles as pets, and these animals lived in temples dedicated to Sobek where they were fed and adorned with jewels. Imagine walking into a temple and seeing a massive crocodile wearing gold bracelets on its ankles and decorated with precious stones. According to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt in the 5th century BCE, he witnessed priests feeding these sacred crocodiles honey, wine, and cakes. These weren't wild animals being observed from a distance, they were being hand-fed luxury foods. But here's the crucial detail that made this possible. The Egyptians weren't keeping just any crocodiles. The species used for mummification and temple keeping was Crocodilus suchos, which is generally smaller and less aggressive than the famous Nile crocodile. This species was more amenable to captivity, which is probably why the Egyptians were able to maintain this practice for thousands of years. The main center of crocodile worship was in the Fayum region, particularly at a city the Greeks called Crocodilopolis. Here, priests maintained what were essentially the world's first crocodile breeding programs. Evidence suggests that thousands of crocodiles would have been captured or bred, with breeding becoming easier after several generations of taming the animals. These weren't just a few ceremonial animals, we're talking about an industrial-scale operation. Archaeologists have discovered thousands of mummified crocodiles in burial sites across Egypt. Every single one represents a crocodile that lived, was cared for, and eventually died in human captivity before being ritually mummified and offered to the gods. So how exactly did the ancient Egyptians manage to keep apex predators as temple animals and pets? This is where it gets fascinating from a practical standpoint. First, they had specialized priests whose entire job was caring for crocodiles. These priests had titles like Prophet of the Crocodile Gods and one who buries the bodies of the crocodile gods. This wasn't a hobby, it was a full-time religious profession. The crocodiles were often kept in special lakes attached to temples, such as at Umbu, where there was a small lake specifically for breeding crocodiles. These controlled environments made it easier to manage the animals while still allowing them to live in a semi-natural habitat. For the sacred crocodiles that lived inside temple complexes or even in homes, the Egyptians provided constant care and food. They weren't concerned about the danger because these animals were considered direct manifestations of the god Sobek on Earth. Harming or allowing harm to come to a sacred crocodile would have been seen as an offense against the gods themselves. But let's be clear, this wasn't completely safe. Eventually, crocodiles proved too dangerous to keep around, even with the religious motivation behind the practice. The combination of their size, power, and unpredictable nature meant that even the most sacred crocodile could attack without warning. Recent scientific analysis has revealed some of the methods used to obtain these crocodiles. Analysis of mummified crocodiles found traces of rope on the specimens, suggesting they may have been tied up and left in the hot sun until they died of dehydration. This might sound cruel to modern ears, but it was likely seen as a ritualistic method of sacrifice rather than simple hunting. When archaeologists excavated ancient Egyptian sites, they found not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of crocodile mummies. At sites like Tebtunis, Hawara, and other locations in the Fayum region, entire cemeteries were dedicated to mummified crocodiles. We're talking about mummies ranging from tiny hatchlings to adults over 10 feet long. This presents an interesting question. Where did all these crocodiles come from? The sheer numbers suggest that the Egyptians had developed sophisticated breeding programs alongside wild capture. Breeding would have become easier after several generations of taming rather than constantly trapping wild reptiles or stealing eggs. Think about what this means. The ancient Egyptians were selectively breeding crocodiles thousands of years ago. They were managing populations, controlling reproduction, and maintaining multi-generational crocodile lineages. This is incredibly advanced animal husbandry for any species, let alone a dangerous predator. Fast forward to the modern era, and you might think humans have learned their lesson about keeping crocodiles, but you'd be wrong. In recent years, the exotic pet trade has seen a surge in people purchasing baby crocodiles and alligators. Why? Because they're cute when they're small, and people love the idea of having something exotic and dangerous. The problem is that baby crocodilians grow fast. Most gator pet owners are unprepared to care for an adult animal that can reach 14 feet and live 80 years. What starts as a palm-sized baby in a fish tank becomes a 1,000-pound apex predator that needs a pond, hundreds of pounds of meat per year, and constant security measures to prevent it from escaping or attacking. The result: wildlife officials across the nation have noticed an uptick in alligators abandoned in parks, creeks, and other public places. In Detroit alone, 6 pet alligators went loose in 2019. Chicago receives as many as 52 surrendered alligators each year. These aren't wild animals, they're former pets that people couldn't handle anymore. Ownership laws vary wildly by location. Some states allow private ownership with permits, others ban it entirely. But regulations don't stop the black market, and baby crocodilians can be purchased online for anywhere from $150 to $15,000 for rare albino specimens. But there's one story that stands out above all others in modern times, and it's both heartwarming and deeply unusual. The story of Pocho and Cheeto. In 1989, Gilberto Cheeto Shadan found a crocodile named Pocho dying on the Reventizan River in Costa Rica. Pocho had been shot after attacking local cows. Most people would have left the 150-pound reptile to die or finish the job, but Cheeto didn't. He brought Pocho home and nursed him back to health for 6 months. During this time, something extraordinary happened. Cheeto and Pocho formed a bond. They slept next to each other. When Cheeto tried to release Pocho back into the wild, the crocodile came back to Cheeto's porch. He didn't want to leave. For over 20 years, Cheeto and Pocho performed weekly shows for tourists, swimming together and demonstrating what appeared to be genuine affection and trust. Their story was featured in the documentary The Man Who Swims with Crocodiles. And when Pocho died in 2011, he was given a public funeral attended by hundreds of people. This story is remarkable because it seems to contradict everything we know about crocodile behavior. Reptiles aren't supposed to bond with humans. They don't have the brain structures for emotional attachment that mammals have. And yet, Cheeto and Pocho's relationship lasted decades without serious incident. Scientists who studied their relationship suggested that Pocho may have imprinted on Cheeto during his recovery period, or that his brain injury from the gunshot somehow altered his behavior. Whatever the explanation, it remains one of the most documented cases of a genuine human-crocodile relationship in modern history. Let's now talk about the benefits of keeping a crocodile as a pet. Benefit number 1: cultural and religious significance. For the ancient Egyptians, keeping crocodiles served a profound religious purpose. These animals were intermediaries between humans and the divine, physical manifestations of the god Sobek. The practice brought communities together in shared religious devotion and provided a focus for elaborate ceremonies and offerings. Benefit number 2: status and prestige. Throughout history, keeping dangerous animals has been a way to demonstrate power, wealth, and fearlessness. In ancient Egypt, having a sacred crocodile in your temple showed that your city had divine favor. In modern times, owning an exotic crocodilian legally or illegally is often about status and the thrill of having something most people would never dare to keep. Benefit number 3: educational and conservation value. Modern facilities that keep crocodile zoos, wildlife centers, and legitimate sanctuaries serve important educational purposes. They allow people to see these incredible animals up close, learn about their biology and conservation needs, and develop appreciation for their ecological role. Some captive breeding programs have even helped save critically endangered species from extinction.